Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Bureau of Land Management and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service virtual public meeting for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program Draft Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement, or SEIS. We are going to give folks a few minutes here to join the meeting, and then we'll begin the PowerPoint presentation and instructions shortly, so please stay tuned. I do want to note that closed captioning is available by clicking the live transcript button icon on your Zoom toolbar and then selecting Show Subtitles. Again, welcome everyone to today's meeting. We're going to give folks a few more minutes to join the meeting, so please stay tuned and we'll start the presentation shortly. Again, I do want to note that closed captioning is available by clicking the live transcript button icon on your Zoom toolbar and then selecting Show Subtitles. Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our meeting today. I would like to thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time and participation. My name is Megan Stone with Environmental Management and Planning Solutions. We are the lead consulting firm that is working with the BLM and the service on this project, and I'm going to be your meeting facilitator today. Additionally, we have members of the BLM and the service with us who will be introduced in a moment. Next slide, please. Before we get started with the presentation, I'm going to go over some ground rules for the meeting. First, your microphones and videos will be turned off for the duration of the meeting today. You will only be unmuted if and when I unmute you during the verbal public comment portion of the meeting if you are commenting. Second, this meeting is being recorded as part of the project record. The recording will be posted to ePlanning. After the presentation, we will move into the verbal public comment portion of the meeting. We ran a registration report at the start of the meeting to identify those that indicated they wanted to offer a verbal public comment today. These individuals are on our list of pre-registered commenters. We will randomize this list of pre-registered commenters and will call on you later after I provide additional instructions. If we have time remaining after we have gone through our list of pre-registered commenters, we will open the verbal public comment portion of the meeting up to anyone who would like to offer a verbal public comment today, who has not already done so, regardless of whether you selected yes or no to commenting when you registered for today's meeting. To allow everyone an opportunity to provide a verbal comment, we'll be using a 3-minute time limit for each commenter. We will have an on-screen timer that will start when you begin your comment. If you do not get the opportunity to offer your verbal public comment today, written public comments can be submitted by October 23rd, 2023 on the BLM's ePlanning website. We'll provide further instructions and information on how to submit your written public comments during the presentation and in the Zoom chat. and we will provide other information about how you can provide written comments and the guidelines we'll be using. With that, I'll now turn it over to Serena Sweet, who is the project manager for the BLM.
Hello, and welcome to the first of our series of virtual public meetings and in-person public meetings for the Coastal Plain Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. My name is Serena Sweet, and I am one of the project managers for the Bureau of Land Management for this Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement process. I'm also going to pass it over now to Stephanie Coons, who is my counterpart at BLM.
Thank you, Serena. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Coons, and I am the other project manager for the Bureau of Land Management for the Coastal Plain Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. And now we'll pass it over to Bobby Joe Skibo, our counterpart at the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bobby Joe Skibo, and I am thrilled to be here today to kick this off. And we are looking forward to hearing from everybody, and hopefully we'll see some of you out in our public meetings as well, in not the virtual space. But thank you, and I think with that, we're ready to kick off the video. You want to just give us a second? Remember, it's our first meeting. There we go. Thanks.
3. Agenda. Today's agenda includes a welcome and opening remarks from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Regional Director Sarah Borio and remarks from Bureau of Land Management Alaska State Director Steve Cohen. We will be providing an overview of the program area and agency responsibilities. We will also provide the background on how we got here and the framework we have used to complete the supplemental analysis for the oil and gas leasing program. In addition, we will provide an overview of the updated range of alternatives, including alternatives A, B, C, and D. We will discuss the tentative schedule for completion and will provide more details on how you can continue to participate in this process.
Thank you for your interest in the draft Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program, which was released in early September. I am Steve Cohen, the State Director for BLM Alaska, joint lead agency on this project alongside the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. BLM's involvement in this program began when the Tax Act directed us to oversee and manage the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program. In 2020, the BLM completed an EIS and issued a record of decision for the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program that we know many of you were involved in. In 2021, we received new direction to revisit that EIS and complete a supplemental EIS to address legal deficiencies noted by the Secretary of the Interior. That new direction has gotten us to this stage in the process where we are seeking your input on the draft SEIS. We know many of you care deeply about this place, and we appreciate the opportunity to hear from you. Now I will hand things over to my colleague Sarah Borio, Regional Director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for your interest in the draft Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. As the land manager of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is responsible for upholding the 5 purposes of the refuge: to conserve animals and plants in their natural diversity, to ensure a place for subsistence, hunting, and gathering activities, to protect water quality and quantity, to fulfill international wildlife treaty obligations, and more recently, to provide for an oil and gas program on the Arctic coastal plain. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service also has responsibilities under additional laws such as the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Endangered Species Act, and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Throughout the supplemental EIS process, our team has worked hard to ensure that all of the purposes of the refuge were considered as we updated information. We utilized new data, science, and previously submitted and new local and indigenous knowledge. We are glad to have had the opportunity to work closely with the Bureau of Land Management on this draft supplemental EIS. The review and development of the draft was completed by a joint interdisciplinary team of the 2 agencies that took into consideration the valuable input obtained through the scoping process and from our cooperating agencies and tribal governments. The Arctic Refuge is a place that many people care deeply about. The refuge has been homelands of Alaska Native peoples since time immemorial, a place that provides physical and cultural sustenance. It is an important place for wildlife, including denning polar bears, the porcupine and central Arctic caribou herds, and migratory birds, that come from all 50 states and as far away as Antarctica to spend the summer and raise their young. Some people have visited the refuge and were inspired by its grandeur, while others only dream of visiting but take solace in its existence. Your participation in the review of this draft SEIS is important to this process. We look forward to considering your feedback and working together to develop the final supplemental environmental impact statement. Thank you.
Slide 5, Program Area. The Coastal Plain Program Area is composed of 1,563,500 acres within the 19.3 million acres of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is the predominant land manager in the program area. Other lands in the coastal plain include Alaska Native lands conveyed pursuant to the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, also known as ANCSA, and other native allotments.
Okay, we are now advancing to slide 6, the history of the Arctic Refuge. In 1960, the Arctic National Wildlife Range was established by Public Land Order 2214 for the purpose of preserving unique wildlife, wilderness, and recreational values. And in 1980, the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, also known as ANILCA, redesignated and expanded the range as part of the larger Arctic Refuge. It also designated much of the original range as wilderness under the 1964 Wilderness Act and provided 4 purposes to guide management of the entire refuge.
Slide 7, Tax Act Overview. Public Law 115-97, known as the Tax Act, was signed into law on December 22, 2017, and removed a prohibition on oil and gas leasing, development, and production in the coastal plain, and created a 5th new purpose for the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, to provide for an oil and gas program on the coastal plain. In the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement, all 5 purposes are being considered with equal importance. The Act also directed the Secretary of the Interior, acting through the Bureau of Land Management, to establish and administer a competitive oil and gas program for the leasing, development, production, and transportation of oil and gas in and from the coastal plain. Slide 8, Tax Act Requirements. The Tax Act required not fewer than 2 oil and gas lease sales within 10 years of enactment, 1 sale not later than 4 years, and a second sale not later than 7 years from enactment. The Act also required that at least 400,000 acres be offered for lease in each of the 2 lease sales in areas that have the highest hydrocarbon discovery potential. The Act also provided that up to 2,000 acres of production and support facilities could be authorized.
Slide 9, 2019 Environmental Impact Statement and Executive Order 13990. The Bureau of Land Management developed an environmental impact statement published in September 2019 and a record of decisions signed in August of 2020. In January 2021, the Bureau of Land Management held the first of 2 required lease sales and 9 lease tracts were leased. The Tax Act requires a second lease sale by December 2024. On January 20, 2021, President Biden issued Executive Order 13990, which directed the Secretary of the Interior to place a temporary moratorium on all activities related to the Arctic Refuge Oil and Gas Program, and to review the program and conduct a new comprehensive analysis of the environmental impacts of the program. Slide 10, Department Review. The Secretary of the Interior's review of the final Coastal Plain Environmental Impact Statement identified multiple legal deficiencies in the underlying records supporting the leases, including, but not limited to, 1, insufficient analysis under the National Environmental Policy Act, including failure to adequately analyze a reasonable range of alternatives in the EIS, and 2, failure in the August 2020 Record of Decision to properly interpret Section 20001 of the Tax Act. Further review identified that the foreign greenhouse gas emissions analysis was also deficient. It was also determined that information related to subsistence resources and subsistence use and access should also be reanalyzed as part of this process. The department's review led to the issuance of Secretarial Order 3401 on June 1st of 2021. That directed the BLM and Fish and Wildlife Service not to take any action to authorize any aspect of the Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program until this supplemental environmental impact statement process was completed, and called for a notice of intent to be published that kicked off this supplemental environmental impact statement process. Slide 11. Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement Overview. The Notice of Intent was published on August 4th, 2021. 6 virtual public meetings were held between September 14th and 16th, 2021. Public scoping ended on October 4th and generated approximately 105,000 public comments that were reviewed and used in our analysis. The Oil and Gas Leasing Program Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement evaluates the impacts of different leasing scenarios and what terms and conditions could apply to those leases. It does not, in and of itself, authorize on-the-ground exploration or development. Future on-the-ground actions requiring BLM approval, including potential exploration and development proposals, would require further National Environmental Policy Act analysis based on site-specific proposals.
Slide 12, Agency Responsibilities. In 2021, the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service signed a Memorandum of Understanding to work as joint lead agencies on the supplemental EIS. The BLM's main responsibility is to oversee and manage the oil and gas leasing program, which includes conducting lease sales and processing applications for relevant permits, as well as conducting the step-down National Environmental Policy Act analysis for future site-specific proposals. Now, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as the surface manager of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, will work closely with the Bureau of Land Management into the future on the implementation of the program to ensure that all 5 purposes of the refuge are equally considered. Although the Tax Act assigns responsibility to the BLM for administering the oil and gas program, it is understood that all activities that will be conducted on the surface of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge would include close coordination with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that is to ensure that the surface management considerations are taken into account. The service, where appropriate, will also engage in consultation under the Endangered Species Act. In addition, the BLM will coordinate with other appropriate federal, state, and North Slope borough agencies, tribal governments, Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act corporations, and other Native organizations as appropriate. Slide 13, Cooperator Agencies. We want to thank each of the following entities for supporting the development of the draft supplemental EIS through providing specialized expertise and input over the last years. Their involvement in the process allows for dialogue and input that is highly valued. So thank you to the State of Alaska, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Native Village of Kaktovik, the Inupiat Community of the Arctic Slope, the Native Village of Venati Tribal Government, Venati Village Council, and the Arctic Village Council.
Slide 14, Supplemental Analysis Overview. Since the Notice of Intent was published in August of 2021, the joint lead agencies have been working to review and address the identified legal deficiencies and defects of the 2019 Environmental Impact Statement and Record of Decision. This review and development of the draft SEIS was completed by a joint interdisciplinary team of the 2 agencies working through a consensus-based process and took into consideration the valuable input that was obtained through scoping and from our cooperating agencies and tribal governments. This resulted in an updated purpose and need statement to recognize the change in joint leadership and the need to balance the 5 statutory purposes of the refuge, whereas not one purpose supersedes the others. To address the misinterpretation of Section 20001 of the Tax Act, the supplemental analysis also produced a new range of alternatives, including a completely new alternative, Alternative D, and alternatives that are estimated to have less than 2,000 acres of surface disturbance, Alternatives C and D, compared to the original EIS that had 2,000 acres of surface disturbance across all action alternatives. The team also focused on significant updates to the lease stipulations and required operating procedures using the best available science, data, and indigenous knowledges that are available. The reasonably foreseeable development scenario was also updated and refined to help us in our analysis. You can find this updated scenario in Appendix B, and you will see how each component of surface disturbance, such as central processing facilities, roads, or gravel pits, are now being calculated and how this applies to each alternative under consideration. Our team has also conducted a more comprehensive analysis of greenhouse gas emissions and have updated the analysis for your consideration in the draft SEIS. We have also updated and reanalyzed information related to subsistence resources and use and access and have produced a new ANILCA Section 810 subsistence evaluation.
Slide 15, updated range of alternatives. The table that you see shows that the alternatives under consideration include A, B, C, and D. The table also highlights how stipulations and required operating procedures were addressed and how analysis, seismic exploration, and surface disturbance acres would apply across the range. Slide 16, Alternative A, no action. Alternative A would not fulfill the direction under the Tax Act to establish and administer a competitive oil and gas leasing program. We're required to include analysis of the no action alternative in our NEPA documents. Under Alternative A, the no action alternative, no federal minerals in the coastal plain would be offered for future oil and gas lease sales following the record of decision for the supplemental EIS. Under this alternative, management actions and resource trends as described in the 2015 Arctic National Wildlife Refuge Revised Comprehensive Conservation Plan would continue. Alternative A is being considered to provide a baseline for the comparison of impacts under the action alternatives. Because no leasing, exploration, or development would occur under this alternative, no production would occur, and no surface would be disturbed by oil and gas activities. Slide 17, Alternative B. Alternative B uses the same lease stipulations and required operating procedures as Alternative B from the 2019 Environmental Impact Statement, with minor edits where appropriate. This alternative would offer the opportunity to lease the entire program area with the fewest acres of no surface occupancy stipulations. However, it would provide additional protections in the form of other lease stipulations and required operating procedures that would apply to post-lease oil and gas activities to reduce potential impacts. An estimated 2,000 acres of surface disturbance would occur under Alternative B. Once 2,000 acres of disturbance are reached, then no additional disturbance would be allowed pursuant to the Tax Act. Seismic exploration would be allowed to occur across the entire program area. You can view more regarding the areas of the coastal plain that would be available for lease sale and applicable stipulations under Alternative B in Maps 2-1 and 2-2.
Slide 18, Alternative C. Alternative C includes the same lease stipulations and required operating procedures as Alternative D1 in the 2019 Environmental Impact Statement, with minor edits where they were appropriate. The key changes under this alternative for the leasing SEIS include the following. Seismic exploration would only be allowed in areas made available for lease sale, and the reasonably foreseeable development scenario of surface disturbance would be 1,464 acres, and this is a reduction of 536 acres from Alternative B. Under Alternative C, portions of the coastal plain would not be available for lease sale as shown on Table 2-1. In addition, a large portion of the remaining area would be subject to what is considered no surface occupancy stipulations. These stipulations prohibit infrastructure on the surface, but still allow the lessee to access and produce oil and gas from the subsurface. In some instances, more prescriptive required operating procedures are analyzed under Alternative C than under Alternative B. And you can view more regarding the areas available for lease sale and the applicable stipulations. Those will be found on Map 2-3 and Map 2-4. Slide 19, Alternative D. Alternative D is the new alternative, and it addresses the National Environmental Policy Act deficiency identified by the Secretary in Secretarial Order 3401. Alternative D was derived from Alternative D2 in the 2019 Environmental Impact Statement. It also offers the minimum amount of acreage required by the Tax Act. This new alternative incorporates more protective lease stipulations and required operating procedures than any alternative previously analyzed. It has the most acres with no surface occupancy stipulations, and it stresses protection of the 4 conservation-oriented statutory purposes of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. It also has an area identified for no leasing in the lowest hydrocarbon potential area, which also happens to correspond to high-quality caribou habitat as well. In considering where to apply no surface occupancy stipulations, the joint lead agencies took into account the use of horizontal extended reach drilling, which can extend up to 6 or more miles from the surface drilling location. Alternative D was developed collaboratively by the joint lead agency specialists and with input from cooperating agencies and input and indigenous knowledge from our tribal governments. The reasonably foreseeable development scenario estimates that the total area of surface disturbance under Alternative D would be 1,040 acres, and this is the least of the action alternatives as shown in Appendix B. Additionally, and similar to Alternative C, seismic exploration would only be allowed in areas available for lease sale. You can view more regarding the areas of the coastal plain that would be available for lease sale and applicable stipulations for Alternative D in Map 2-5 and Map 2-6.
Slide 20, Schedule and Next Steps. The public review and comment period will run from September 8th through October 23rd. The final SEIS will be published in winter of 2024. The record of decision will be published in the spring of 2024. The second lease sale must be held no later than December of 2024. Slide 21, How to participate. Thank you once again for being here and for sharing your valuable perspectives on the draft Coastal Plain Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. Please take note of the ePlanning website, where you will be able to submit your written input and can also keep abreast of any upcoming meetings or notifications. Thank you, and we will now begin our public testimony.
Thank you for that presentation. We're going to go ahead and switch our screen to our public comment slide. So just give us a moment here, and I'll provide some instructions for how we're going to run the comment session. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a list of pre-registered commenters. As we proceed, participants will be asked to provide their comments in a randomized order. Again, if you registered before the start time of today's meeting, you're on our pre-registered commenter list. We also ran another registration report during that video to see if we had any more people sign up to comment. So when it is your turn to provide a comment, we'll read your name aloud, and we will ask you to spell your first and last name out for the record. And when you hear your name called out, please use the raised hand feature so that we know you're ready and available to offer your comment. You can access the raise hand feature by clicking on either the reactions icon or the participants list icon, which are both located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you wave your mouse back and forth across the bottom of your Zoom screen, these icons should appear. You may need to exit out of your full screen Zoom view to see these icons. You can then select the raise hand feature, either in the reactions icon or at the bottom of your participants list. Or if you are calling in through the phone, please press *9 to access the raise hand feature. Once you've raised your hand, you will then be unmuted so that you can provide your verbal public comment. You may be double muted. If that's the case, we'll prompt you to unmute yourself on your end so that we can hear you. Again, please spell out your first and last name for the record before providing your verbal comment. And if you're representing an organization or group, please say so during your comment. As mentioned earlier, we'll allow 3 minutes for you to offer your comment. I'll prompt you to wrap up your comment when you've reached this 3-minute limit, and you'll also see a timer on the screen. After you've provided your comment, we'll mute you and move on to our next commenter. Again, once we've worked our way through the current list of pre-registered commenters, if we have time, we'll move on to those who registered after the start of today's meeting. If we still have time remaining after that, which I think we will, we'll move on to anyone who would like to provide a comment, regardless if you checked the yes or maybe box when registering for today's meeting. All right, next slide, please. On the screen here, I've included some graphics of where you can find the raise hand icon. And for any of our phone callers, I will call out the last 4 digits of your phone number. And to find the raise hand feature on your phone keypad, you can press *9 to raise your hand. But if you're on your computer or the Zoom app, you can use the participants icon in the Zoom toolbar or the reactions icon, which has that little raise hand icon. So I'll just pause here and give everyone a moment to take a look. And if anybody's having any tech issues at any point, you can send us a chat and we'll get you some help. All right, next slide, please. All right, it is currently around 9:35 Alaska time. So we're going to officially start the verbal public comment portion of today's meeting to receive comments related to the SEIS. Again, this verbal public comment portion of the meeting is being recorded as part of the official record. As a reminder, your camera and mic control settings are restricted during this time. You will only be able to talk if and when you are unmuted, so please remember to speak when prompted. The BLM and the service want to hear from all members of the public, so we'll be using the following guidelines today. First, please be mindful of the length of your comment so that everyone who wants to speak has an opportunity to do so. Second, please be respectful of others and their viewpoints. Third, please refrain from using profanity. While passion is welcome in your comment, policy requires that we mute anyone who uses inappropriate language because we are recording this meeting and others may be live streaming. So please avoid inappropriate language. If that does happen, we will mute you and ask you to try again at a future meeting. So with that, we'll get started with our first pre-registered commenter, who is Pamela Miller. All right. I do see Pamela in our list of attendees. Pamela, if you'd still like to provide a comment. Perfect, I see your hand raised. I'll go ahead and unmute you. Hello. Can you hear us? I'll go ahead and...
Hello.
Hi, Pamela.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you spell your first and last name for the record, please?
My name is Pamela A. Miller, P-A-M-E-L-A, middle initial A, Miller.
Thank you. You can begin your comment.
Thank you for this opportunity to comment. I have to say, a 9 a.m. in the morning hearing is a first, I think. I'm glad you're having the public hearing meetings. I hope there are more actual public hearings, including the one in Fairbanks. I understand we will be able to speak on the record in Fairbanks. I want to thank the administration for canceling the lease sale, the prior leases. They were issued in a hurried manner that was unlawful. And I am glad that you've started with a new EIS, a supplemental. I believe that there have been some corrections made regarding an interpretation of the 2,000 acre so-called limitation that are well warranted. I also believe that much more analysis of the actual impacts from the full process, from seismic, water withdrawals that might be necessary, and so on. A very hard look should be taken. I will be reviewing that in earnest, given the short time to comment. I think the alternatives are not yet strong enough to fully protect the porcupine caribou and the Indigenous Alaskans, the Gwich'in Nation from Canada and US who depend on the porcupine caribou herd. I'm also quite concerned about the lack of the sheer magnitude of leasing and how it will affect bird habitat along the coast, including the coastal lagoons, the nearshore coastal area, and the riverine habitat in the western part of the reserve that's very important bird habitat. Also, I'm a little perplexed why there's not an alternative that offers the minimum amount of acreage that's required to be offered, the 400,000 acres per lease sale. It doesn't make sense to me. And I am concerned for the onshore denning habitat of polar bears at Camden Bay and the Canning River Delta, which do not have the necessary stipulation protections in the EIS. Thank you for this opportunity to comment, and I'll do it in another hearing with the rest of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Go ahead and place you back on mute and lower your hand. All right. We will move to our next pre-registered commenter, who is Monty Rogers. I don't see Monty in our attendees list today. I'll check if we have any phone callers in case Monty's joining by phone, but I don't see any phone callers either. So we can circle back to see if Monty joins later. But with that, we'll move to our next pre-registered commenter, who is Mike Scott. And I do see Mike on our attendees list. So if you'd like to provide a comment, Mike, please raise your hand. And if you're having trouble with that raise hand feature, we can help you out. Just send us a chat. And I think now that this is the list of people who indicated they potentially wanted to provide a comment. So these might be folks who decided they don't want to provide a comment anymore. So we'll go ahead and move on to Zach Huff. And I see Zach in our participants list. Zach, if you decided that you'd like to provide a comment, feel free to raise your hand. If not, we'll go ahead and move on to Ellen Montgomery, who I do also see in our attendees list. Ellen, if you'd like to provide a comment, please access that raise hand feature. I don't see Ellen has their hand raised, so we'll go ahead and move on to Lindsay Johnson, but we'll give Ellen another second. And again, if anyone's having trouble raising the hand feature, feel free to send us a chat, or if you would like to just tell us you don't want to comment, you can chat us. I see that Ellen let us know in the chat that she'd prefer not to comment. Thanks for confirming, Ellen. So we'll move on to Lindsay. All right. Lindsay, if you'd like to provide a comment, can access that raise hand feature. If not, no worries. And up on the screen, you'll see that ePlanning link. We'll also pop that in the chat so people can have the information of where to submit comments online. Lindsay has let us know that she'll hold off on submitting a verbal comment today as well. So we'll move on to George Yaska. All right, George, if you'd like to provide a comment, you can use that raise hand feature. No raise hand from George yet. Oh, I see he raised his hand. Go ahead and unmute him just in case he'd like to provide a comment. Hi there, George. Would you still like to comment?
No, good morning. I accidentally raised my hand. I'm not commenting. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for confirming. Go ahead and mute you now. All right. Our next pre-registered commenter is Michael Gyrick.
He
And
also said in the chat box there, I think a lot of people did accidental, perhaps clicked a box. So, but it's in the chat.
yep, totally fine. Thanks everyone for confirming. All right. And we'll move on to Gary Menville. Gary, if you'd like to provide a comment, feel free to raise your hand. If not, no worries. We encourage everyone to submit written comments. Again, that deadline for written comments is October 23rd. All right. I think maybe there's been a mistake with potentially the registration report and the maybe feature. So I think now we could just open it up to everyone and see if anyone would like to provide a comment. So at this point, if anyone would like to provide a comment, feel free to access that raise hand feature. And we'll take a look at our participants list and keep an eye on that and see if anyone would like to provide a comment.
Megan, would you mind explaining to folks how they could raise their hand again, just in case?
Yeah, definitely. So on Zoom, if you go to the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, I'm actually going to pause this tutorial because I do see we have a hand raised from Sarah James. So we'll go ahead and unmute Sarah. Hi, Sarah, can you hear us? And I'll just prompt you to unmute Sarah in case you're having trouble with that feature.
Hello, my name is Sarah James. You could
Thanks,
hear
Sarah.
me now?
We can. Can you spell your first and last name for the record?
Yeah, Sarah is A-R-A-H, James J-A-M-E-S.
Thanks, Sarah. You can begin your comment now.
Yeah, I'm from Arctic Village. I am a member tribal member to Native Village of Metis Tribal Government. And as a Metis Tribal Government, we extend a deep gratitude to Department of Interior for making just a decision to cancel all Arctic refuge leases. So allowing any development would, do the damage to the refuge and the land upon which we deeply depend. My name is Sarah James. I grew up off the land with my parents, and one of the way I learned to protect the caribou and to caribou to protect me to survive out there. So it means everything to me to be a caribou people. And I'm from Arctic Village, and that's where still migrate through Arctic Village. And just like right now, just like last month, caribou went through. It's just like, wow, people are all excited and went out and harvest for their neighbors and for their family and for the village. And it's a happy time. This is very meaningful to protect this land that are so vital to our survival of our people now and into the future. Our community already seem effect of development can have on our way of life. It's true the existing pipeline we think that caused some direction where the caribou needs to go. And also the activity up north will be really bad on it because it's way up north, the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. We want to protect that permanently, protect it. And because not only for the caribou use that whole coastal plain or the 1002 area of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge as a breeding ground. And they never pertain to one area. 1 year, they might have some within that coastal plain anywhere. But there is concentrated area which need to be protected. And there's no alternative to us for the caribou and for us. So to protect the whole coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife for the birthing ground of many, many other animals like birds. Polar bear is about to be on endangered species. And this is only one place, 1/10 of the Arctic coast that polar bear will be protected. So that one place that we really needed to protect it. And also for even before they get there, post-calving, it's very important to us. Come April, all the caribou where they're at within Northeast Alaska, Yukon, Canada, and Northwest Territory, their direction looking is north because that's where they all gonna go for calving. And those movements are very important to us, not only the 1002 area, but the whole migrate of the porcupine caribou. And porcupine caribou is migrate all that area. And to us, it's make us who we are and proud to be who we are as a Caribou people. Yeah, and so the post calving for the coastal plain is very important. Not only that, but outside of that too. That's what I'm trying to say. Any further disruption to the ecological health of this land put our way assistant at risk by canceling these leases. Increasing uncertain future has to become more secure. Those are the security, and we need to keep it that way permanently. And to keep long-standing appealing to respect our way of life depend on the refuge at all time. By our knowledge as a tribe, our rights, our sovereign government to continue exist in concert with this land. The federal government is one step closer to elevate true and protective of government to government relation between United States and our tribal government. Our people, thank you for this historic step toward maintaining Indigenous right and sovereignty. I feel like, I have the right to explain my way of life because I grew up that way. And English is still my second language. And many times, even putting English into my language, vice versa, is very hard because I know my way of life as a Caribou people. And I'm trying to make myself clear as I can at this national level. And hopefully we protect this birthing ground permanently for our future generation, because I'm not only speaking to authorities, but I'm speaking to everyone in the United States because this is public interest land and we do need everybody's voice there. And because 1/10 of Arctic coast is at threat, and it doesn't need to. Our porcupine caribou maintain to their way of life, just like we are. And that's their area to be protected, to survive, and for my people to survive. So thank you for giving me time. And down the line, I'll say more. I'm an elder, age of 79, and I have spoke on protecting the porcupine caribou, and it's a way of life. It's a good way of life. The tribal government, the sovereign nation, and being sovereign is wonderful, and it's good for everybody to be sovereign and tell the truth, because climate change is real in the Arctic, and we got a lot of work to do. It's not done yet. So thank you for giving me time again. And it's the last minute I had to come on because in Alaska, or my way of working is not only guaranteed on internet, I had to change around last minute location wise. So that's why I was late. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Sarah, and I'm really glad that you were able to join us on the Zoom and get the internet. Thank you so much. Go ahead and lower your hand, and we'll have time if you want to provide any more comments. So.
Oh, yes. Caribou is like, I was home. I'm in Fairbanks now, but I was in Arctic Village during the caribou migrate through. And you should see my people's face when they're happy and be together, cut meat together and bring in meat and cut it together and packing it and drying it, smoking it, preparing for winter. It's a good harvest. I saw that with my own eyes. I'm not just only telling story. And that's just within 2 weeks ago. So the history I'm talking about is that way. When I was growing up, when we spot caribou, everybody jump around and say, caribou, caribou. It could be long ways. We could only see it with the binocular and follow it in. And we always respect the first herd, that leading the herd, the way to go, the way they need to go. Then we can hunt them. We don't break up their migratory route, and we respect every part of the caribou. And we have our means and ways of protect and respect to handle a certain, when we cut meat and how prepare them. And all that is really a big, now I see why our people have to do that. It's like a science. It's more like a science, that way we protect our caribou and our way of life. Otherwise, we won't survive. So we did right. The caribou did right, and they're still healthy today. So I just want to put that, and I really want, I always put a important direction that we can use less oil till we don't have to, because it's destroying ourselves. We know fossil fuels got something to do with climate change. With that along, I always say there's 4 R's, which is refuse, reuse, reduce, and refuse. And to do your recycle and go alternative energy, because that is real in many other countries. So that's what I really like to see as a future, that will protect the porcupine caribou and do your part. And to do your part, this is caribou belong to all of us here in the United States. And we've been educating why we say no to oil. And our elders direct us back in 1988. That's when they finally wrote a resolution to protect the porcupine caribou. And they direct us to go out into the world and educate the world in good way why we say no to oil and not to compromise and stay united. And we have been 15 villages, Canadian and US. And that doing a good way is very good. It's been good. And it's been a lot of work, but it's still safe. Just keep it safe. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Sarah. All right, I'll place you back on mute and we'll see if anyone else would like to provide a comment. People that have already provided comments are welcome to speak again. And again, if anyone would like to provide a comment, you can raise your hand and I'll hop back into that reminder of how you can raise your hand. So if we have anyone on the phone, you can press *9 on your phone keypad to raise your hand. And then if we have anyone on Zoom, you can hover your mouse over the bottom of your Zoom screen. Sometimes it likes to hide at the top of your Zoom screen, so you can try hovering at the top too. And then the toolbar will appear. And then there's two options you have. You can press the participants list, click on that. And then once you click in there, you'll have an option to raise your hand. And then the other one is if you look in your toolbar, you'll see the little raise hand icon like this, and you can click on that to raise your hand. One thing, if you're not seeing the toolbar, you might have to exit the full screen view in Zoom. On your keyboard, you can press escape on your keypad and that will exit the full screen view, and that can help if you're not seeing the toolbar. I do see that we have a hand raised, or we briefly did, but someone lowered their hand. I missed who raised their hand briefly, but I'll keep an eye on that. I think that person might have just been testing the raise hand to make sure that it worked. But we'll keep an eye on our attendees list and see if we get any hands raised. I think we will also work on getting the information posted in the chat of where you can submit public comments on ePlanning. And you can submit those written comments until October 23rd. I do see we have a hand raised now from Gary Mendeville, so I'll go ahead and unmute you, Gary. Hi there. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Could you please spell your first and last name for the record?
GaryMendivil. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Sarah James for sharing her perspectives with us. I just hope I have the energy and passion that she does when I turn 79. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Agreed. All right. We posted that information in the chat of where you can find the draft SEIS documents, the portal to provide comments, and the complete meeting schedule. So if you click that link and open that up, let me just follow along. If you press documents, that's where you can find all of the public meeting schedule information and the registration links for the virtual public meetings. You do need to register for each virtual public meeting, and then you'll get a confirmation email for that virtual public meeting. Sometimes it does go to your junk folder, so be sure to check on that. But you'll find a confirmation email and it'll have all that information about how to join, and also it'll have phone numbers if you end up needing to call into the meeting for any reason. And then If you scroll down a little bit, there's a green button that says participate now, and that's going to be the button you want to click when you're ready to submit those written comments. That'll take you to the commenting portal. And then eventually, when the time comes, when we get everything 508 compliant, which means that it's accessible to everyone, that is where we will post the recordings of this meeting. So I saw we had one question in the chat that someone wasn't able to catch all of the PowerPoint. That's no problem at all. We'll be posting the whole recording of the Zoom, so you can catch everything later. So we'll get that posted for you. No need to worry. And you can bookmark that link we put in the chat, or keep it somewhere safe and refer back to it, because that's where the recordings will be posted. So we'll tell you guys all that information again at the future virtual meetings. But yeah, just wanted to provide that in case it's helpful to anyone. Anyways, we'll keep an eye out still for any hands raised we might have. See if anyone wants to provide some comments. All right, not seeing any hands raised so far. Again, if anyone would like to raise their hand, we'll keep the screen up for a little bit. And I'll remind you guys how to raise your hand. So if we have any phone callers, you can press *9 on your keypad. And then if you're on Zoom on your computer, you can hover your mouse on your screen and a little toolbar should pop up. You can hit the raise hand feature, or you can select the participants list and you'll see an option to raise your hand in there as well. And then we will be on until 10:30 Alaska time to listen to your comments. So if anyone would like to provide comments, we'll be here ready to listen. And then we will have those future virtual meetings and in-person meetings as well. All right, I see we have our hand raised. All right, I'll go ahead and unmute you now, Pam. All right, I'll prompt you to unmute just in case. Hi there.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
This is Pamela A. Miller. I'll make a few more points since we have time in the meeting.
Go ahead.
As I mentioned before, I think 9 a.m. in the morning is for the general public is a hard time. Many people are working. We're still kind of on Alaska summer time zone, which means staying up really late. You could have a 2 a.m. hearing and get more people, I think, or 9 at night. I understand you have, I'm glad you have as many virtual meetings. It's not clear that these are that this is a hearing versus a public comment. If the public comment has the same weight as a public hearing would, hopefully it is transcribed testimony. So I don't know if you want to address that at all, and then I'll make a couple other comments.
I can address that. Can everybody hear me okay? So I think to go to your point about the 9 a.m. meeting, Pam, one of the things we were hoping is to be able to capture a lot of different time zones. As we all know, this project is pretty important across various parts of the United States and even the world. So we wanted to provide opportunities that kind of reached a lot of different time zones in the world. So that's part of the 9 a.m. today, and we have some varying time slots over our next sets of virtual public meetings. I guess to address your question about the public meeting versus public hearing, comments that are provided today will be transcribed and will be fully incorporated for analysis in the record as we move to the final supplemental environmental impact statement. And we are going to be holding what we consider ANILPA 810 hearings in some of our rural communities. And we have identified where those meetings are going to be held in addition to the 810 ANILPA hearings on our website. So please take a look there. And if you have any questions about that, please do feel free to reach out to us. But I think I'll leave that there and see if you have any other comments or questions.
Yeah, feel free
Okay,
to.
oh, go ahead.
Feel free to move forward with the rest of your comments, Pam.
Okay, I think I'm off mute. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I am concerned that the public meeting in Fairbanks, I'm hopeful that that will be an open hearing style where people can hear each other's comments and questions and that it be recorded on the record. That's very important as a matter of procedure. You know, if people did want to make their private comments, that's up to them. But for the general public to understand the depth of the knowledge and the point of views of our Northern Alaska residents, it's very important that have an open hearing type part of the meeting. So that was unclear to me. And it also is a little perplexing that there is no meeting in Anchorage. Obviously, I'm biased towards Fairbanks, so I'm glad you have one here. But there, it would be reasonable to hold a hearing as well in Anchorage. I will be delving as time moves forward with the nitty-gritty of the stipulations and protective measures in the EIS. But at my first read, the no surface occupancy stipulations do not appear to be as well defined as they should be. They should be unwaivable, and they should apply to all activities in those areas, whether it be seismic or on lease activities. And I will mention seismic is an activity that occurs again and again once an area is open to leasing and development. And in my experience as a former seismic monitor in the Arctic Refuge during the winter in the 80s, and having kept up with the issue ever since, seismic does have very serious long-term impacts to vegetation. The 3D seismic will have much more intense impacts, and the snow cover in many parts of the western coastal plain and that hilly coastal plain in there, it's very vulnerable to damage. And I don't see so far that the stipulations and the provisions that would be put in place for seismic activity, as well as the further activities after that, would have major impacts not only to the habitat, but to the intact nature of the coastal plain, which is the only part of Alaska's North Slope off limits up until this leasing process is mandated by the Tax Act, which sadly passed. You know, it's been protected as an intact ecosystem from the coast through the Brooks Range to the south side of the Brooks Range. And that is a very significant worldwide achievement. And I hate to see it piecemealed away, and especially with insufficient strict stipulations and only having the bare minimum area available for offered to lease as regrettably is allowed under the law. Thank you for this further opportunity to comment.
Thank you for
I'm
your
done.
comment, Pam. We'll go ahead and place you back on mute and lower your hand. I do see we just had a phone caller join and we didn't have phone callers before, so I'm just gonna repeat the instructions for phone callers. I did want to just make sure that they knew how to raise their hand. So if you're joining by phone, we are in our comment session. We'll be accepting comments until 10:30 Alaska time. If you'd like to provide a comment, you can press *9 to raise your hand on your phone keypad. And again, that's *9 if you'd like to raise your hand, and then we will unmute you and you can provide your verbal comment. For right now, I don't see any hands raised. Again, those instructions are up on the screen and you can hover your mouse and you should see a Zoom toolbar. And you can click on the participants list to find your raise hand icon, or you can see a little hand icon that looks like this in the Zoom toolbar itself. So we'll leave the screen up, and as a reminder, we have that information in the Zoom chat of where you can find the draft SEIS documents along with the information about how to comment, the different virtual meeting options, in-person meetings, and all of that stuff. And that link is also displayed on the screen. As a reminder, if anyone's joining us late or missed part of the presentation, this recording will be posted to that ePlanning link that is on the screen and in the chat. All right, still not seeing any hands raised, but I'll keep an eye out. And if you're having trouble with the raise hand feature, just feel free to send us a chat and we'll help you out. I'm going to repost the SEIS info in the ePlanning link in the chat just in case it got missed by anyone. So that's there for you.
So this is Serena Sweet again. We just had another question come in the chat related to the in-person public meetings and whether or not they will be recorded and published online. So just wanted to confirm that we will be recording the audio from those meetings, but not visual. And those transcripts will become available further on in the process. If that doesn't answer your question, Josie, I guess please provide a little more clarification and we can respond accordingly.
Josie responded, thanks. So it looks like we got that question answered. Thank you, Serena.
All right, so it looks like we had another question come in on the chat about our process overall, especially related to advertising this hearing and future hearings. So we did provide quite a bit of information. There was a press release that went out related to our process. And we have been sending out Facebook posts and other various notifications across people that we know are interested and across groups that we know may be interested in this process. We're always welcome to suggestions on how we can improve how we advertise hearings like this and other public meetings. So would be happy to talk about that more. And definitely feel free to share as you know, this is the first in a series of in-person and virtual public meetings that we'll be holding over the next couple of weeks. So please do feel free to share this information related to where people can register and participate, or if they're interested in participating in person, where they can find that information as well. I just saw one other question come in about hard copies of the document. Those are in the process of being prepared. And I know, Pamela, you had requested a hard copy. It is not quite ready yet, but I was going to give you a call when I did have some information on that. I will get back with you and let you know more once I find out what the exact status of that is. But if others are interested in copies of the document, they are available online, of course, at our our ePlanning website. And they can be downloaded. You can also reach out to us if you are interested in receiving a hard copy. Cannot guarantee how quickly that will be made available, but we can discuss that. Please do reach out to one of us if that is something that you are interested in. We do have a question in the chat also about a comment period extension request. Those are definitely going to be considered when and if we receive them. At this point, we have received at least one, maybe more, but always happy to consider those. Just to clarify, those are not decisions that any of us on this team are going to be able to make. But please do send them in and we will process those with our leadership moving forward. And I do see that we have a hand up.
Sarah, we'll go ahead and get you unmuted. You should be able to unmute now.
Oh, this is Sarah again. Hello?
Sounds like we're having a little bit of feedback. Let me see what might be the issue.
What's going on?
I think that sounds better. Okay, try now. Let's see if that echo went away. Can you try talking now, Sarah?
Hello?
We can hear you. Okay, the echoey noise went away.
Hello, this is Sarah again.
Hi, Sarah.
Sarah
We can hear
James
you.
from Arctic Village.
Yes, we can hear you.
I live
Can you
in
hear
Arctic
us?
Village. Hello? I
Hi,
just
Sarah.
want to say more about more hearings in Anchorage if all possible. And because we have whole state of Alaska concerned to that comes to Anchorage. And so more hearing in Washington, D.C., because there are people throughout the nation very concerned and take up a lot of their time on a phone and working to save the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge that I know of for years. And I just want to explain more about how much we use on caribou. It's also a medicine to us because certain part of caribou, like the hip, is delicacy to us, and it's a good medicine. And some people, when they're due to die or something like that, they always request certain part of the caribou. Just recently, my first cousin had no time in our world anymore, but he said, bring me caribou soup with the debris in it. You know, when we out there, sometimes we catch debris from the land, you know, and that get caught on the meat. And he said, yeah, I want soup with some debris on it, and that will make me feel better. And so I made him one, and he went and got up and talked more, like he was okay. And then that same day he went. So those are the way we get our stories from our elders and people that's getting ready for a journey. That's how much the caribou meant to us. Every part very important to us. And just recently, like I said, I've been up there. I'm going back up there because of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and to protect the coastal plain. It's very important to me, so I do a lot of travel. So I don't spend as much time as I want to on my land and live my life and speak my language. So I'm going back up there, but I did, when I was up there, I did the best part of my meal was marrow from the laking. We use down to the we use hoofs for calling caribou when we hunt in the woods, because they always click. And when they hear the click, they think, oh, that's just another caribou. So those are very important to, and then we use it for a rattler to attract caribou. And now we even have it as a wind chime, very nice to listen to. So to us today, or even is 4 generations back, we still have those needs and use of the caribou that we get even today. I just want to share more about how much every part of the caribou meant to us. And we call that place, the whole 1002 area, we call that place Ishikutsan Kwantai Gotlet, that means sacred place where the life began. Not only for the caribou, but many, many other animal like birds and ducks and all the predators, grizzly and wolverine and wolves are all raising their young at foothill too, and while caribou raising their young and training in the coastal plain. And it's not like NPR, National Petroleum Reserve. It's huge. That one is huge, coastal plain. Over to our side for porcupine is very limited. Clean water from Brooks Range down to the ocean, very small, limited clean water. And if that ever get polluted, there's no technology in the world will clean the oil off a tundra. So it's really threatened to our caribou and our way of life. And so we need people's voice from all over the world. Like at one point, somebody said that today. So we need as many hearings because it belongs to all of us as Americans. So we need more hearings and Anchorage mainly, because we do have friends in Anchorage. We do have friends throughout the whole state of Alaska. Subsistence is a first thing for all the native of Alaska. We still hunt and fish. We still live in a village life, and they go out and hunt and fish and trap, and they respect their way. There's 286 or something like that tribal village in Alaska, federally recognized tribal village. They do have a voice, just like native village of any kind, an Arctic village, and any kind. We are a sovereign nation. We have a sovereign way of life that we were born into, and we need to be protected, our subsistent way of life, because we do live in Alaska. And this is the last of it. After that, if they develop this, the last piece about 1/10 of Arctic coast, where are we going to go and find an ecosystem that still works, and protect our subsistent way of life for all Alaska Native? So we do have sovereign people, tribal people here in the United States, in Alaska. Alaska is United States, and they just lost their over 10 years now. They're not getting their king salmon. They're not getting their salmon. And all these people, 60 villages along the Yukon, Canada and US, is hurting for their way of life with salmon people. And we're very worried about our caribou, porcupine caribou, in the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to be protected. I want the world to know that. Thank you for giving me another time, because it's my way of life. It makes me who I am. And it means sacred place where the life began. That is the place to be protected, and no alternative for the 1002 area, because they use the whole 1002 area. We use the whole 1002 area. And it's in our history, it's in our stories, and we got name and places that we are. That was our way of life, and still is. Thank you for listening again, and for the time. Thank you again, Masicho Shalaknai. Thank you very much, all my relation.
Thank you for your comment, Sarah. Thank you for your time. We'll place you back on mute. And there was a question in the chat, so I will turn it over to Bobby Joe to answer.
Hi again, this is Bobby Joe Skiba with the Fish and Wildlife Service. In the event of a government shutdown, we will be working with our leadership to identify a path forward. Obviously, we are hoping that a shutdown will be averted because of that disruption that it definitely causes all of us as federal employees and our country here. So I have been watching closely every day, and so I would let folks know that on the ePlanning website, if you bookmark that, there will be updates related to the shutdown and how we would address it there. So thank you though for that question. And I think I'll pass it back over to Megan, and without any more hands, we might be able to wrap this up. Thanks.
Thank you, Bobby Joe. I do see another, oh, looks like we had that hand lowered. All right. We'll go ahead and close out the meeting for today. I do want to remind folks to check on the ePlanning site for what site updates. That is being updated frequently with information about both in-person and virtual meetings. We appreciate everyone's time and participation today and look forward to hearing from you all in the future. Thank you.